That day, I stood in the middle of the living room wearing a faded dress, while my sister walked down the stairs in a brand new evening gown that cost nearly $1,000. My mother looked at her, eyes glowing with pride. When she turned to me, all she said was a curt, "Don't embarrass the family." I was only 16 years old that day. And that was the first time I clearly understood what it meant to not be the chosen child. But it was also that moment when I swore I would never let anyone diminish my worth just because I wasn't the golden daughter. My name is Mia Lawrence, I'm 28, and I grew up in the suburbs of Greenville, South Carolina. In my family, there were always two parallel worlds. One basked in light, where my sister Alyssa was constantly praised, adored, treated like a princess, and the other, where I existed quietly like a faint shadow. Alyssa is 4 years older than me, now 32, and ever since we were kids, she's been our parents' greatest pride. Back in elementary school, I used to wonder if I had done something wrong. Every time Alyssa got the latest Barbie doll, I received a box of crayons with the caps missing. Every summer she was sent to dance camp in Florida while I stayed home to clean the garage. Even when it came to haircuts, Mom would take her to an upscale salon while I got mine done at home because you just need to keep it tidy. I remember it vividly, a fall morning when I was 14. Alyssa had dropped her new iPhone in the school toilet. The very next day, Dad brought her another one, an even newer model. But when my old Nokia broke, Dad said, "Mia, you need to learn to appreciate what you have. We don't print money." But for Alyssa, they were willing to go into debt to make sure she never lacked a thing. I started working part-time at 16, morning shifts at a coffee shop, tutoring in the evenings. While Alyssa got her own car at 18 so she wouldn't get too tired commuting to college, I had to walk nearly 2 miles to the public library every day for study group. One time I asked Mom why everything was so unfair. She casually said, "Because Alyssa is more fragile than you, you're the strong one, Mia." That answer felt like an invisible slap. Because in my heart, it never felt fair, and never felt true. Even though I was always in the shadows of our family's spotlight, I tried not to let it break me. I studied hard, earned a full scholarship to the state university. I bought my first car with money I had saved. I started paying taxes at 17. And Alyssa? She changed majors 3 times in 4 years, dropped out, then launched a handmade candle shop, funded by our parents. I wasn't jealous. I just wanted to be seen. Just once. Not as the agreeable one, the one who can take it, or the easy-to-handle little sister. But as a daughter. Also a child. Also deserving. There was one time I had appendicitis while working a night shift at a bakery. I called Mom, doubled over in pain. She answered, her voice groggy. "Can you ask Alyssa to take you to the hospital? I'm tired." Alyssa didn't pick up. I took a cab to the emergency room alone, clutching my stomach, with no one beside me. After surgery, the first person who visited me wasn't my mom or my sister. It was my coworker from the same shift. Gradually I learned to swallow my pain. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I knew if I reacted, the family would once again label me the troublemaker. I became the girl of quiet and patience. Until one day I realized, patience isn't a virtue if it turns you into a ghost in your own family. And I started redrawing my boundaries. I learned how to say no. I learned how to step away from dinner tables where I was only brought up for comparison. And I asked myself, if I ever got married, would they treat me the way they did Alyssa? I don't yet know the answer. But deep down, I'm scared. Because to them, I'll always just be the other daughter. I stared at the computer screen for 5 whole minutes without blinking. That PDF file, titled, "Wedding Costs, Mia and Ryan," felt like a dagger right in the middle of my chest. $35,863. Every line item accounted for, down to the last cent. Wedding flowers, $1,200. Wedding cake, $650. Extra chairs for dad's side of the family, $248. I reached the bottom of the invoice, my hands starting to tremble. Please, pay at your earliest convenience. Your parents expect you to handle this promptly. No thank you, no well wishes, just a demand, cold, precise. I felt my heart twist, as if I'd just been cast out of a family I thought was finally opening its arms. Ryan stood behind me, his shoulders stiff, as he read the message over my shoulder. He turned to me, voice low, each word cutting through his teeth. What the hell is this, Mia? I didn't answer. Because how could I? I was asking myself the same thing. I remembered my mother holding my hand, her eyes soft. I don't want you to feel like you're missing out anymore. This wedding is our gift to you. That line now felt like a cruel joke. A setup. A trap I had walked into, completely unguarded. I didn't sleep that night. I kept pacing, checking emails, rereading every message Mom had sent. Nowhere did it say this was an advance. Nowhere did it say I needed to pay it back. Not one word. I remembered Dad's cheerful voice, as he placed his hand on Ryan's shoulder at the engagement party. We're so proud of her, she finally found a good man to take her home. Every compliment, every hug, every gesture, now felt hollow. The truth laid bare. Harsh and raw, they never meant to give, they were investing, and now expected a return. The next morning, Ryan found me in the kitchen. I can write this check right now, but not because I want to, because you need to end this hurt. I looked at him, eyes red. I don't need their money. I don't need a wedding gift that gets yanked back like a slap. But I do need an answer. I need to be seen as a daughter, not a debt to collect. Ryan hugged me, tight, as if he was trying to hold together all the pieces my family had shattered. That evening, I sat down to write a letter. I couldn't confront them face to face. I knew if I did I'd scream. I'd break down into pieces and then the cycle would just repeat. I'd hurt, they'd blame, and I'd apologize. In the letter I wrote, Mom and Dad, I received the invoice. And I don't understand. You both voluntarily said you'd cover the wedding. You said it was a gift. An expression of love. I never asked, never hinted. I believed you. For the first time in years I thought, maybe I too was worthy of unconditional love. But this invoice tells me I'm just a transaction. I'm not angry about the money, I'm angry about the betrayal. And I'm hurt because once again, I've been reminded that I'm not Alyssa. I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and enclosed a check for the full $35,863. Before sealing it I added one final line, my hands shaking, but firm. This will be the last financial interaction between us. From now on, I will not accept, nor require, anything from you, including inheritance. The day I dropped that envelope into the mailbox, the sky was overcast, the wind bitterly cold. But I didn't shiver. I felt relief. Sadness, yes. But in that cold, for the first time, I felt like I was taking back ownership of my life. 3 days passed, no reply, no messages, no calls, no explanation. Silence. The exact kind they always used to punish me whenever I crossed the line. The only difference was, this time, I didn't feel guilty. I thought about Alyssa. About the look in her eyes when she received the keys to the beach house. When Mom placed that 10-carat diamond wedding ring in her hand and said, "You deserve it." I used to dream of hearing those words, but not anymore. I don't need anyone to tell me I deserve it, I know I do. That evening Ryan brought home 2 cups of mint ice cream, my favorite flavor since I was a kid, even though Mom always said, that flavor isn't classy at all. I smiled while eating, not even noticing when tears started falling. Not because I was hurt, but because, for the first time, I knew who truly chose to stay by my side. I still remember the day of Alyssa's wedding, like it was branded into my memory with hot iron. Everything was held at a luxury resort in Charleston, South Carolina, complete with a private golf course, a champagne fountain, and a live jazz band. The cost, as my mother proudly announced at the rehearsal dinner, was $400,000. Totally worth it for my perfect daughter. I stood at the corner of a table, wearing a borrowed dress from a friend, holding a half-finished glass of wine, and smiled as if I were watching a dream. Not because I was happy, but because I had grown used to being the side character in my own life. My parents bought Alyssa and her husband a 3-bedroom house in the upscale Isle of Palms neighborhood. The house had a backyard big enough for barbecues and a hot tub straight out of a magazine. They called it the first wedding gift. So, our daughter won't have to suffer like other people. Other people clearly meant me. I didn't say anything, didn't question, didn't complain. I still believed, naively and painfully, that maybe one day my turn would come. Not $400,000. Just a little fairness. 4 years later, at age 28, I got engaged to the man I love, Ryan, a veterinarian at the local clinic. He was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't someone's backup plan. We met at a fundraising event for animal protection. After more than 3 years together, Ryan proposed during a sunset in Asheville, with a ring he had carefully picked out for months. I cried like a child. And then something I never expected happened. When we announced the wedding, my parents offered to pay for the entire thing. I was stunned. Mom hugged me, her eyes glowing brighter than they had on Alyssa's wedding day. I know I've been strict, Mia, but you're my daughter. I'll take care of everything for this wedding. I just want you to be happy. I was speechless. Something inside me softened. As if the wall I had built over the years was beginning to crack. I thought, maybe they've changed. Maybe, at last, I am the daughter worthy of love. My parents got involved in everything, from choosing the venue in the Blue Ridge Mountains, to the cake tasting, to reviewing the guest list. They were unusually enthusiastic. Whenever a problem came up, Dad would wave his hand and say loudly, "Mia doesn't need to worry, if I say it's a gift, it's a gift. This is your time to enjoy." I believed them. We picked a small church with stained glass windows, followed by an outdoor reception. Warm, elegant, and private, just like I'd dreamed. The total cost was estimated to be nearly $36,000. A significant amount, but nothing compared to what they spent on Alyssa. At the reception, my mom gave a speech. She said, "We're proud of both our daughters, but today is Mia's day, and we won't hold back anything to make her happy." The guests applauded. Ryan squeezed my hand. I looked at my mom, choked up, and for the first time in my life, I thought maybe the past could be left behind. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from anxiety, but from joy. Maybe the old wounds didn't matter anymore. Maybe I had been wrong about my parents. We planned to go on our honeymoon a week later, since Ryan still had to finish up the summer vaccination schedule at the clinic. I didn't mind. Everything already felt full. But 2 days later, I got an email from my father titled, "Wedding Costs, Mia and Ryan." I thought it was a keepsake invoice or something sweet. But when I opened it, my hands went cold. A PDF file, over 6 pages long, itemizing every single wedding expense. From the flowers, the cake, even down to the silk-printed invitations. Total, $35,863. And at the bottom, a line that read, "Please pay at your earliest convenience. Your parents expect you to handle this promptly." I froze. I read it again, a second time, a third, but the words didn't change. Cold, clinical, emotionless. No well wishes, no explanation, just a demand, as if I were a customer in a business deal. Ryan walked in and saw me staring blankly at the screen. After reading the email, he gently took my hand. "They don't get to do this to you." I didn't answer. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, like I had when I was 16, wearing an old dress at my sister's party, quietly witnessing the same truth circle back. This time, sharper than a blade. 3 days after sending the letter and the check, I still hadn't heard back from my parents. No emails, no texts, No explanations or denials. Just absolute silence. As if they were waiting to see whether I'd regret it and come crawling back. They didn't know. I was far too tired to ever go back again. On the fourth morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was restless or anxious, but because today, I was ready to write the first chapter of something I had never had in my life. Boundaries. I sat at the kitchen table, in front of the brown leather journal Ryan had given me on my birthday. I'd never written in it before, but today, I knew exactly what I wanted the first sentence to be. I don't owe anyone anything, just because I was born. Then, I opened my laptop, created a new folder, closure. Inside I saved a copy of the letter I had sent, a photo of the check and a new file, a formal statement addressed to the family lawyer, where my parents had signed all previous financial documents, and the will. I wrote, plainly, I, Mia Lawrence, formally decline any inheritance, assets or future financial support from Mr. James and Mrs. Loretta Lawrence. Any request, proposal or financial intervention will not be considered. When I sent that email, my heart was pounding, not out of fear, but because it was the first time I chose to walk away from the game they had always forced me to play. That evening, Ryan and I sat on the couch, the warm yellow light casting over the open pages of our books. He reached over and gently squeezed my hand. Are you sure? More sure than ever. Ryan nodded. He didn't say anything else. He understood. In that silence, I felt something I'd never known growing up. Respect. But that fragile silence didn't last long. The next afternoon, the first messages started rolling in, not from my parents, but from extended family. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered me. An aunt in Nebraska texted, "You should be more understanding, all parents have their reasons. Sending the invoice was just a way to teach you a lesson. Don't make a big deal out of it." An uncle who never even replied to my graduation announcement wrote a 3-page email. Mia, they did their best, you can't destroy family over one little misunderstanding. I didn't respond. I just saved every message in the closure folder. That night, Sarah called. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, she was at my front door. I was in the kitchen when the loud banging started. Ryan had just stepped out of the shower when I silently motioned for him to stay back. MIA. Open the door. What the hell are you doing? Sarah's voice screeched like a blade. I stood behind the door, saying nothing. I simply pulled out my phone and hit record. Sarah kept going. Mom and Dad didn't do anything wrong, it was a test. They were going to give you $100,000 but you ruined everything. I let out a silent laugh. They really thought this was some kind of reward-based prank? Sarah screamed. You're selfish. You're tearing this family apart because of your damn ego. Who do you think you are, Mia? And then came the line that made me slam the curtain shut and step back. Do you even know how much Mom and Dad cried over you? Or are you too busy playing the victim for attention? I stopped the recording, still silent, still behind the door. After 5 minutes of yelling into the void, Sarah left, but not before shoving a piece of paper under the door. If you don't apologize, don't expect to ever see anyone in this family again. I picked up the note, folded it into quarters, and tossed it into the small fire in the fireplace. Never looked back. That night, I wrote another line in the brown leather journal. Family isn't a ransom to force someone to bow down. If it's real, it doesn't need conditions. I don't know how long this will drag on. I don't know if my parents will ever acknowledge what they did, but one thing I do know. I stood up. And this time, I'm not sitting back down. I thought the worst was over after sending the check and the letter. But I was wrong. The worst hadn't come yet. The worst was when the entire family started moving in sync, like a choir rehearsed to control the narrative, with me as the center target. It all began the night Sarah showed up pounding at my door. After her yelling and the threat-filled note turned to ash in my fireplace, I thought she was done, but no. The next morning my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers, no names saved, Each time I picked up, it started sweet, then turned venomous. "Mia, it's Aunt Shelley. I think you should talk to your mom again. Don't be so stubborn. Family is everything, sweetheart." "Sweetie, you really made your father sad. Don't you see you're tearing the family apart?" said an uncle who hadn't remembered my birthday for 5 years straight. Then the messages came like a storm. Facebook, Instagram, even email. People I'd barely exchanged more than 2 words with suddenly jumped in to analyze. "Your parents did this out of love. Why can't you understand?" I understood. I understood to the point of numbness. They didn't love me the way they loved Sarah. They loved me conditionally. They loved me only if I was obedient. If I resisted, I was a thorn to be removed. Ryan saw me shrinking behind my phone screen the entire evening. He yanked the phone from my hands and looked at me firmly. "That's enough, you don't need them rewriting your truth. I just don't want to be seen as the one tearing the family apart." I sighed. Ryan gripped my shoulder. "They decided what you were a long time ago, Mia. The real question is, do you want to keep playing the role they wrote for you?" Eyeing a foothold next to the window. I walked to the window. It was raining outside. I wasn't sure if it was the cold rain, or if it was my heart finally falling apart. The next afternoon, I went to the store to get milk and bread. While I was waiting in line to pay, a woman I recognized as a friend of my mother approached. "Mia, oh my goodness, your mother hasn't been eating for days, you're so heartless." I turned to her, voice soft but colder than the wind outside. "Did you see her heartbreak when she sent me that invoice? Or when she left me alone in the hospital at 18 with appendicitis?" She froze. I paid and left. But it didn't stop there. That evening, Sarah came back. This time, with a camera. Ryan was working a night shift. I was home alone. When the doorbell rang, I checked the video feed. Sarah was standing there with a man, filming everything on his phone. She shouted, "This is the house where the ungrateful little sister decided to abandon her whole family over a misunderstanding? She refused the $100,000 our parents wanted to give her. What do you think? Do kids today have any gratitude?" I didn't open the door. I stood in the living room, my hands trembling with rage. This wasn't family. This was a show. And I was the villain in the narrative they wanted the world to see. I called the police, saved the footage as evidence. When the patrol car arrived, Sarah finally left, but not before shouting one last thing into the house. "You'll die alone, Mia, and when our parents die, don't expect anyone to call you to the funeral." The door shut. I sank to the floor, gasping, not from fear, but from shock. I never imagined that after all those years of hoping, what I'd get in return was a coordinated takedown by people who once called themselves family. That night, I wrote again in the brown journal. "When your sister gets rewarded for silence, and you're punished for telling the truth, you'll know who's truly free." I started documenting every call, every message, every person who joined the guilt campaign. Not for revenge, but to prepare. Because I knew, if I didn't stand firm, next time it wouldn't be an invoice. It would be something more insidious, more painful, disguised as love. And I had made my choice. This time, I wouldn't bow. I wouldn't apologize for protecting myself. I wouldn't stay silent to keep a fake peace. If I had to be labeled ungrateful to live in truth, then so be it. Because I'd rather be the bad daughter than spend my life as a well-behaved puppet. What I didn't expect was that the message from Uncle Elliot, my father's only brother, would be the one that left me completely speechless. "Mia, this is Uncle Elliot, your dad's brother. I know the whole family's turned their back on you, and I think it's time you knew the truth. Call me when you're ready." I was never particularly close to Uncle Elliot. At family gatherings, he always stood off to the side, made small talk with a few people, then quietly left before anyone noticed. My father used to say he was stubborn, disrespectful, and always blowing things out of proportion. I believed that. Until now. I called him back. His voice was low and calm, but sharp like a razor. After a few awkward pleasantries, he got straight to the point. Your dad is repeating exactly what our parents did to me. The only difference is, this time, the victim is you. I sat upright, heart pounding. What do you mean? I asked, though deep down, I already sensed there was something dark beneath it all. 20 years ago, Uncle Elliot began. I was forced to give up a study abroad scholarship because our parents didn't approve of me majoring in fine arts. They wanted me to go into banking, like your father. When I refused, they did everything they could. They emptied my savings, spread rumors that I had stolen money from the family, and the person who sided with them was your dad. I was speechless. Everything he said felt like puzzle pieces falling into place. The final pieces that made the family picture horrifyingly clear. A cycle of financial manipulation, passed down from generation. I used to think your dad was a victim. But when he started treating you the same way our parents treated me, I realized he never learned the lesson. He just passed on the same control, the same pressure, using the same outdated weapon, money. They broke me once, he continued, voice cracking. And now they're doing the same thing to you. I bit my lip, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I thought back to the wedding invoice. The way Dad called it, a lesson in responsibility. It was exactly how Uncle Elliot described it. A carbon copy of the past. They told me if I didn't comply, I'd be erased from the family records. And I was. No one came to my wedding. I was devastated. I questioned myself. Wondered if I was wrong. Just like you are now. The dam of emotion broke inside me. I couldn't hold it in. I kept thinking I was being too sensitive. I kept worrying I was overreacting. But now I see. I was just the next in line in this pattern. And you did something your father never had the courage to do, Uncle Elliot cut in. You stood up. I said nothing. I couldn't tell if I felt pain or relief. Just that memories came flooding back. The time they forgot me during parent-teacher night because my sister had a cold. The time I stood outside the hospital alone after my appendectomy, waiting for someone who never came. The time my father told me, "You should be grateful we raised you." I didn't want to hate them. I had tried to understand. Tried to forgive. But now I understood. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting yourself be stabbed in the back over and over. Thank you. So much, I said, voice trembling. I never thought I'd hear something like this from anyone in the family. I know, he replied, and I called. Because I don't want you to disappear into the dark the way I once did. We ended the call nearly an hour later. When I hung up, I felt empty, but quietly at peace. For the first time in weeks, there was calm after the storm. That evening, Ryan and I sat on the rooftop. The breeze was soft, the sky full of stars. He handed me a cup of tea, his eyes gentle. Are you okay? Not completely, but for the first time, I feel like I have an ally. I told him everything Uncle Elliot had said. Ryan sat in silence for a long while, then nodded. I always knew you weren't weak, but now, I think you're stronger than anyone I've ever known. I leaned my head on his shoulder and closed my eyes. In the still darkness, I whispered. And I won't repeat their mistakes. I won't live under control, or under invisible debts disguised as love. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't going back. I didn't expect anything more from my parents after all that, truly. I believed the relationship had rotted to the root, beyond repair. But then, on a Friday afternoon, just after I got off work and was waiting at the red light at Rivers and Main, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. I didn't check it right away, but once I pulled into the driveway I finally looked. And froze when I saw the sender's name. Dad. James Lawrence. His voice in the recording was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. No anger, no threats, none of his usual superiority. Just a hoarse, tired, slightly shaky voice. Mia. I don't want this to go on any longer. If you're willing, I'd like to meet just the two of us. I think we need to talk. I'll be waiting. I replayed the voicemail 3 times. Each time a sharp ache grew in my chest. Not out of hope, but because I recognized something familiar. The thing that haunted me all through childhood. The longing for acknowledgement. I didn't respond right away, I let myself think it through. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to be sure. I wouldn't walk back into that conversation just to become the same obedient, easily wounded daughter I used to be. 3 days later, I agreed to meet. A small cafe on the north side of the city. Neutral ground. A place with no shared memories, where I could remain in control. Dad arrived on time. He wore a white button-down shirt and gray slacks, looked just like the image I remembered of him at the family firm. But he looked older. More gray in his hair, puffy eyes. The commanding presence was gone, slightly hunched now. We ordered drinks and sat across from each other. No one spoke for the first 2 minutes. Finally, he said, "Mia, I know that invoice, it wasn't right." "Not right?" I raised an eyebrow. "You call sending me a nearly $36,000 bill after volunteering to pay for the wedding not right?" He sighed. "I'm not saying it was right, I just didn't realize it would hurt you that much." I gave a cold chuckle. "So you thought it would make me grateful?" He said nothing. After a moment, he pulled out a white envelope from his leather bag. "This is the check you sent. I never cashed it. I don't intend to. I just wanted you to know. Everything I did was to teach you responsibility." I clenched my fists, fingernails digging into my palms. "Did you ever send Alyssa an invoice for responsibility? When you gave her a house, when you threw her that fairy tale wedding, did you ever ask her to repay you just to teach a lesson?" He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the coffee in front of him. "I didn't think about it. Things were different then." "Different how, Dad?" I cut in. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp. "Different because she's the daughter you love? And I'm the one who always needs to be taught?" The air thickened. He finally looked up. And for the first time in my life, there was no pride in his eyes. Only confusion. Only vulnerability. "I'm sorry. If you ever felt abandoned—" "You don't need to say if, Dad," I interrupted. "I didn't feel abandoned. I was abandoned. And not just once." I looked at him, more direct than I'd ever been. "I didn't come here to get my money back. I came here to make it clear. This is no longer about money. It's about the pain I've carried for 28 years. I pushed the envelope toward him. "I won't take it back, because if I do, you'll think everything can be solved with money, and next time, you'll do it to someone else." He didn't say anything, just gave a small nod, but in his eyes, I saw something break. Not full remorse. But maybe, for the first time, he realized he no longer had control. "I don't want to lose you, Mia," he said hoarsely. "You lost me a long time ago," I said as I stood. "The only difference now is I've stopped pretending I wasn't hurt." I walked away. No looking back, no tears. Just a deep sense that I had finally moved the boulder that had sat on my chest for nearly 3 decades. That night, I sat beside Ryan on the couch and told him everything. "How do you feel?" he asked, eyes fixed on mine. I pressed my lips together, then nodded softly. "I don't need a perfect apology. I just needed to know that I was strong enough to say everything I was once forced to swallow." After that final meeting with my dad, I returned home with a strange but clear emptiness. No more inner battles. No more questioning whether I was right or wrong. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I just got free. I placed the envelope containing the check in the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, locked it, and stuck a note on top. Not to be used as payment for forgiveness. From that day on, I unfollowed every family member's social media. I blocked Sarah's number. I turned off notifications for the extended family group on Facebook. To me, it wasn't a rash break. It was a conscious decision, like cutting out a thorn that had been buried in my skin for far too long. I no longer hoped my mother would call just to say, "I miss you." I stopped wishing Sarah would show up, in silence. No yelling, no blame. I let go of the dream that my father would say, "I'm proud of you." And the moment I stopped waiting for those things, I began to feel free. Ryan, the only man who had never made me question whether love was real, was the one person who never asked me to prove anything, to be accepted. One night, he hugged me from behind while I tended to the lavender pot on our balcony. "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" he asked. I didn't turn around. I just held his hand against my waist. "Maybe, but not so they can come back." I began to write again. Not letters. A new life plan. Ryan and I decided to leave Greenville. We didn't want to stay in a place full of bruised memories. We moved to Asheville, surrounded by trees, mountains, quiet streets, and a kind, artistic community. I changed jobs, left the old company, where a few people still kept in touch with Sarah. I started working for a green tech startup where everyone called each other by first names. No titles, no hierarchy. For the first time, I didn't have to prove anything beyond my skills and kindness. Every Sunday morning, I made tea, played jazz, and read unfinished pages from my favorite books. No one demanded anything. No one questioned me. No one ever said, "You should understand because you're Mia." I started going to therapy regularly. And during one session, the therapist asked, "Mia, if you could send one message to your 16-year-old self, the girl sitting alone by her hospital bed with no one visiting, what would you say?" I choked up. It took a while before I could speak. I'd say, "Stop waiting, you deserve love, even when you're not being the good girl." I cried. But this time, the tears weren't weakness. They were relief. Sarah never reached out again. And I don't want her to. I know if she ever did, it would be another battle. Not a reconciliation. My father never called again either. Maybe he understood. Maybe he still thinks I'm ungrateful. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. My mother, the one who used to say, "Mia is the cold-hearted one," remains silent. Silent, just as she always was when I needed an embrace. I'm not angry anymore. Because anger only kept me in the room they built. And now I've stepped outside. Ryan and I painted our new home together. Olive green walls, white trim, large windows facing a line of trees. We planted wildflowers along the fence. I named the stray cat I adopted Hope. Because it came into my life right when I thought I had stopped believing in anything. One day, while Ryan was reading a book, I asked, "If we have a daughter someday, what's the first thing you think we should teach her?" Eating. He didn't take long to answer. That she doesn't need to be perfect to be loved. I smiled, nodded. And that if someone tells her to be nice, she has every right to ask, "And what about them?" Ryan held me close. He didn't say a word. But I knew he understood. And I knew, finally, I had made it out. I don't need the family I was born into to validate me. I don't need a family dinner full of comparisons to be seen as good. I just need a life. One where I own my feelings and write the next chapter on my terms. A chapter with no invoices disguised as lessons, no tears spilled for conditional love. A chapter where every day I get to be Mia. Whole, free, and unafraid. Mia's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, to find true peace, we must walk away from those we thought were bound to us by blood. Not everyone who gives us life knows how to love us properly. Healing doesn't come from patching up toxic ties, but from the courage to step out and build the life we deserve. Mia chose herself. And that's the bravest decision anyone hurt by family can make. What do you think about Mia's choice? Was she too harsh? Or was this the only way to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and life.